Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, Legal Intelligence, or prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Vice Chair Squilla. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember O.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning, Councilmember. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and colleagues.
Chair Thomas.
Good afternoon, I'm present.
Okay, I apologize, but with Councilmember Brooks not responding, I can't go forward for the moment.
Councilman Johnson is here. I mean, I have heard you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. And we have a quorum.
Thank you, colleagues. And now that we have a quorum, the committee is present. I now call this hearing in order. This is the public hearing on the Committee of Streets and Services regarding bills number 210001, 210002, 210118, 21035, 210136, 210178, 210179, and 210180. Mr. Maynard, will you please read the titles of these bills?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Bill number 210001, an ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Dexter Street and Lyceum Avenue and Green Lane, Baker Street and Leverington Avenue, Apple Street and Shurs Lane, Boone Street and Markle Street and Roxborough Avenue, Conarroe Street and Pechin Street and Mitchell Street. Bill number 210002, an ordinance amending section 2 of an ordinance, bill number 140902, approved March 4th, 2015, entitled an ordinance authorizing the revision of lines and grades on a portion of City Plan numbers 224 and 232 by striking from the city plan and vacating Cayuga Street from Whitaker Avenue to its terminus eastwardly therefrom, and reserving and placing on the city plan a right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes within the lines of Cayuga Street being stricken, and authorizing acceptance of the grant to the city of the said right-of-way under certain terms and conditions by extending the period for compliance with the terms and conditions stated therein. Bill number 210118, an ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of Manton Street and South 18th Street and South 16th Street and South 21st Street, South 20th Street and Ellsworth Street, Carlisle Street and Wharton Street, and Tasker Street, Titan Street and South 16th Street and South 18th Street. Bill number 210119, an ordinance establishing parking regulations in the vicinity of South 15th Street and Reed Street, South 19th Street and Reed Street, South 18th Street and Federal Street, South 18th Street and Morris Street, Wharton Street and South 22nd to South 17th Street, Ellsworth Street and South 22nd Street, Morris Street and South 17th Street. Bill number 210135, an ordinance amending Chapter 9-208 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Sidewalk Cafes, and Title 4, Subcode A of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Zoning and Use Registration Permits, by adding new provisions allowing restaurants applying for a sidewalk cafe permit or temporary lot uses permit to allow outdoor entertainment all under certain terms and conditions. An ordinance Bill number 210136, an ordinance authorizing the Procurement Commissioner to enter into a contract for the construction of a sewer and appurtenant work required to provide public sewer service in the unit block of Osborne Street. Bill number 210178, an ordinance establishing a no truck parking regulation on both sides of Frontenac Street from Levick Street to Devereaux Avenue. Bill number 210179, an ordinance establishing a no truck parking regulation on Hammond Avenue between East Nedrow and Crescentville Road. And Bill number 210180, an ordinance amending Section 9-213 of the Philadelphia Code, entitled Farmers Markets, by adding a permissible location, all under certain terms and conditions. Those are the bills to be heard, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have today, everyone who's been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that the public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reason or expectation of privacy. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for questions or comments they have, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they would like to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must and only be used for that purposes. With that being said, Mr. Maynard, will you please call the first panel of witnesses we have here to testify? Mr. Maynard. Mr. Maynard.
Yes. The first bill to be heard is Bill number 210002. Noel Miller from Streets and Sarah Chu from Planning are the two witnesses to hear from.
Good morning to you both. Please state your name for the record and begin with your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noelle Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 210002, introduced by Councilmember Canuna Sanchez. This is not an administration ordinance, but an ordinance requested by Mr. Jeffrey R. Benner, Esquire of Marcus and Hoffman, representing Koza and Sorelli Realty Partnership. The purpose of this proposed ordinance is to amend a previous ordinance, Bill number 140902, approved March 4th, 2015, which authorized the striking from the city plan and vacating of Cayuga Street from Whitaker Avenue to its terminus, eastwardly therefrom. The proposed amendment will extend the operable period for compliance with the terms and conditions of the authorizing ordinance until March 4th, 2023. This section of Cayuga Street is not paved or open to public traffic, and the city has no plans to construct or maintain a street at this location. A right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes will be reserved within the area being stricken. This action has been requested by the abutting owners in order to provide opportunity for business expansion and additional area for parking. This ordinance is supported by the Department of Streets and is recommended to your committee for favorable action. This concludes my testimony, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Mr. Chair, can you please call the next witness for this panel, and then after the next witness, we'll open it up for questions.
Of course. The next witness for on this bill is Sarah Chu from Planning. Ms. Chu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Member Thomas and members of the Committee on Streets and Services. I'm Sarah Chu, City Planner with the Philadelphia City Planning Commission. I'm here to testify on Bill number 210002, which was introduced by Councilmember Sanchez on January 28, 2021. Bill number 210002 amends Bill number 140902 by extending the timeline for compliance of the original bill, which was approved by the Planning Commission on December 9, 2014. Bill number 140902 authorized the revisions of lines and grades on city plan by striking and vacating Cayuga Street from Whitaker Avenue to its terminus, and reserving a right-of-way for sewer and drainage purposes within the lines of Cayuga Street. This portion of Cayuga Street is not physically paved or open to public traffic. Therefore, at its meeting on February 25th, 2021, the City Planning Commission recommended a bill number 210002 for approval as item in accord with previous policy. I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you both for your testimony. Before I open it up to questions for this panel, I want to take a moment to recognize that Council members Kendra Brooks as well as Council member Cindy Bass are both present in today's hearing. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Council members, are there any questions for this particular panel on this bill? There being none, I want to thank you for your testimony and let you know that we definitely appreciate it. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the next panel or witness to testify?
Of course. The next bill to be heard is Bill 210135, and the first person we'll hear from is Councilmember Gilmore Richardson before we hear from witnesses.
Yeah, Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson before we hear from the panel on this particular bill.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and colleagues of the Streets and Services Committee, and also to my co-sponsors, council members Dom and Heenan. But I wanted to briefly give a little background on the impetus for this legislation and also talk about the amendment process that we have undertaken with the administration and other external stakeholders. A year ago this month, all of our lives were uprooted when COVID-19 began to spread in Philadelphia and across this country. And during this past year, our restaurants, which are one of our city's most important economic drivers, were forced to close and adapt to changing rules. When the winter began and temperatures dropped, restaurants saw an immediate decline in business. Additionally, snow and other inclement weather this particular winter season prevented businesses from offering outdoor dining as an option, further impacting our restaurant community. The combination of cold temperatures, inclement weather, and a pandemic has caused at least 200 full-service restaurants to close, 50 of which are closed permanently. Restaurants need a way to attract customers to eat outdoors, to stem the tide of closures, and performers and artists need the chance to once again provide vibrance throughout our city. With the spring season beginning and slightly more hope and optimism than last year around COVID-19, we must take additional steps to help restaurants and businesses reopen and succeed. And I want to give kudos to my colleagues, Councilmember Heenan and Dom, who introduced legislation on outdoor dining very early on during the pandemic, and particularly Councilmember Dom for his work with the Hospitality Working Group that I had an opportunity to meet with. And I think all of that work has been exceedingly helpful and important to the impetus for this legislation. So on February 18th of this year, I introduced the bill to amend sections 9-208 and A-301.2.5 of the Philadelphia Code to add in a definition of outdoor entertainment and allow restaurants, bars, and entertainment venues that have already received or will receive a sidewalk cafe or a temporary use permit to offer outdoor entertainment. The pandemic has taken its toll on many restaurants in Philadelphia. However, the city has responded quickly to create crucial pathways for operation to restaurant owners. A recent report from Center City District stated, outdoor seating has been the survival strategy. The report found that outdoor seating in Center City increased from 2,997 seats in June to 5,152 seats in September, and even maintained at nearly 4,700 seats in December. Outdoor entertainment will give restaurant owners and operators more options for encouraging patrons to dine out safely. The intent of this bill is to provide restaurants, bars, and streeteries the opportunity to offer outdoor entertainment until the end of 2021, and that coincides with the other outdoor dining legislation, while we continue to vaccinate Philadelphians and move towards the end of the pandemic. Currently, restaurants, bars, and streeteries with sidewalk cafe or temporary use permits are barred from offering any outdoor entertainment, regardless of space or the type of entertainment being offered. This wholesale ban of outdoor entertainment does not account for the situation businesses now face. So in response to a number of conversations with restaurant and hospitality community, streeteries, and artists all across the city, my office crafted the bill to acknowledge our current reality and provide possible relief for businesses. So we're committed to continuing those conversations, and we have continued those conversations and had a very robust meeting with the administration and all of the departments that are represented on the call today, including streets and health and L&I and commerce and planning. And we also know that the bill was passed out of the planning commission with a favorable recommendation. And in the set of amendments that were circulated that I will explain, we sought to address all the issues we heard both from our internal and external stakeholders. So the amendments will address the administration's concern to ensure there is a process that provides for, and I'm going to use a blended word here, eduforcement. Thank you, Mike Carroll. Education and enforcement. And that will really help them with the ability to enforce, particularly around, a permitting process, social distancing between the performers and the diners, ADA compliance, and any issues around excessive noise. Businesses will need to provide 72-hour notice prior to hosting outdoor entertainment, and the amendments will codify regulations from the administration regarding safe outdoor entertainment practices and will provide clearer guidance for businesses that wish to offer outdoor entertainment. And Mr. Chair, I just wanted to quickly go through the chart that was circulated to all members of this committee prior to the hearing today, just to give a brief explanation before we hear testimony. So the amendments offered will do the following, and again, the information has already been circulated. It will provide for and clarify the definition of outdoor entertainment to exclude adult entertainment. The language will create a process for businesses to notify the administration and for the administration to keep track of outdoor entertainment in Philadelphia. And the process will ensure that businesses are complying with the code and all regulations. Businesses must submit an agreement that they understand and will follow all laws and regulations. The language will codify the COVID regulations that are already in place. And this language will allow businesses to be better educated on how to have outdoor entertainment while complying with all the other relevant regulations that are already in place. The original bill specified compliance with all current code provisions, and that does include the ADA requirements, but we added an amendment to ensure that we will be able to deal with any businesses that may repeatedly violate laws that protect access for people with disabilities. We have another amendment that will help the administration better manage any noise issues and disruptions from performances by limiting the number of performances that can occur on one city block at one specific time. And then there's additional language to help the administration better manage outdoor entertainment by creating a permit process specifically for this issue up until June 15th, and then thereafter allowing the city to have the right to deny the right to conduct outdoor entertainment performances on bases including right-of-way conflicts, public safety concerns, history of violations, or history of complaints. And those denials will be provided in writing with the case identified, and I'll allow our additional witnesses to talk more about that specific amendment during their testimony. So I'm hopeful with all of this work and agreement from all the administrative departments that we have worked with, all the external stakeholders we have heard from meeting with the LCE at the state level and a number of my colleagues, in addition to meeting with Councilmember Dom's hospitality hospitality working group. I'm hopeful that with this detailed work by my team and I, that we are able to pass this legislation out of committee today with the support of all the members on this committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I'm looking forward to the testimony being offered on this bill and being able to address any questions or concerns relative to the amendments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council Member, and thank you for your leadership on this issue. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the first panel as it relates to this bill?
Of course. The first witness we'll hear from is Mike Carroll from Otis. On deck after that is Jessica Coulter from PIDC, Nicole Marquis from Save Philly Restaurants, William Reed from Standard Tap et al., and J. Nathan Bazell from Woody's Bar and the Midtown Merchants Group.
Thank you. Will the first witness please say your name for the record and begin with your testimony?
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. My name is Michael Carroll. I'm the Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability. Good morning, Chairmember Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Mike Carroll, and I'm the Deputy Managing Director for the Office of Transportation, Infrastructure, and Sustainability, which we call Otis. Thank you, Chairmember Thomas, for the opportunity to speak with you today. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 210135, introduced by Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. We've been working collaboratively regarding this legislation. This ordinance adds new provisions to the code to give restaurants that are providing outdoor dining an opportunity to offer outdoor entertainment during the pandemic. As an administration, we are very sensitive to the plight of restaurants and entertainers during COVID. We have specific concerns surrounding the health and safety of the public, but we look forward to working with Council to fulfill the intent of this legislation while keeping the public safe and minimizing any nuisances. There are a few factors we want to keep in mind. First, as the weather improves and vaccinations increase, we expect to see a significant rebound in pedestrian activity on our sidewalks. The city must exercise considerable vigilance in ensuring that everyone, including persons who depend on wheelchairs, can depend on a consistently clear 6-foot path to pass safely while encouraging social distancing. This has been a challenge often, even in pre-COVID times. Recognizing that the pandemic is not over, we still need restaurants and entertainers to follow the city's COVID safety guidelines and maintain social distancing, and to avoid a festival atmosphere which might be crowd-inducing. After reviewing this legislation, we were able to offer several amendments for consideration, and we have seen that the Planning Commission has voted in support of the bill with the inclusion of these proposed amendments. To highlight some of the key ideas, as was mentioned, businesses must notify the city through the streetery@phila.gov email address that a performance is proposed 72 hours in advance. In this notification, applications should certify in writing that they have read and understood the city's COVID safety guidelines relating to entertainment, dining, and leisure, as well as any regulations that are promulgated by the city pursuant to this legislation. We'd like to give some time for this opportunity to perform outside, to burn in with both the restaurants and the public, but also for the government. That means that through the early stages of this legislation, the Philadelphia Streets Commissioner would be given discretion to deny specific opportunities for outdoor performances in writing. This will give us a chance to build capacity, but also to ensure that both we and our partners in the business community are addressing the details to make sure that this proceeds successfully. Finally, we want to make specific provisions that allow for the scale of performances to be of a nature which minimizes health risks and impacts to the broader public. These amendments were included to address a number of important performances within a specific area, to reference health guidelines in terms of the footprint allowable for performances, and to consider the possibility of competing performances, as well as the safety and right-of-way guidance which persists with or without the pandemic. The bill and proposed amendments would allow restaurants to offer outdoor entertainment while keeping the public safe. We must continue to take COVID-19 seriously until more of the public gets vaccinated, but we also do certainly appreciate the need to promote a greater sense of normalcy and a commitment to support artists and the artist community. While we continue to work with restaurants to promote commerce and to support the public, We hope that we can also ensure a safe and a healthy experience for everyone. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time. And I'm supported, I should mention, by members of the Streets Department, Department of License and Inspection, and the Planning Commission. And we've also coordinated with the Health Department and the Commerce Department if questions come up in those areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please say the name of the next panel, and we can move forward with testimony, and we can save our questions to the end of the panel.
Of course. Our next witness is Jessica Coulter from PIDC.
Hello, good afternoon, Chairpersons Thomas and Squilla and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share testimony today. My name is Jessica Coulter. I'm the Vice President of Marketing Communications for the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, PIDC. And on a personal note, as someone with a background in arts and culture, I'm really pleased to be here today to talk about this bill at the intersection of arts and economic recovery. As you all are aware, PIDC's mission is to cultivate investment, directly support business growth and stability, and drive neighborhood revitalization, all to help Philadelphia's economy recover and continue to thrive. This vital work has a major impact on financial stability, wealth building, and quality of life for a diverse range of residents in communities representing every single part of the city. As you know, among those communities, the region's restaurant, hospitality, and entertainment sectors are certainly those most severely hurt by the pandemic shutdown and the ongoing public space restrictions. Job reductions, job losses, business closures, and threats of closure are looming heavily in this space, and an all-hands-on-deck approach to helping our small businesses in the restaurant and entertainment industries to survive is imperative. That's why PIDC wholeheartedly supports this bill, number 210135, because it offers another critical step towards helping restaurants reopen and rebound, generating revenue that can help the entire city's recovery. The intersection of arts and entertainment with the restaurant industry will also be important to attracting residents, visitors, and workers back to Philadelphia's restaurants through the arts once it's safe to do so. As economic development specialists, we understand the importance of the restaurant industry to Philadelphia's overall economic health. At PIDC, we have consistently prioritized the restaurant industry in our relief programs to date to help ensure that Philadelphia businesses in this critical sector get their fair share of funding. For instance, working collaboratively with Council and the Department of Commerce, we were able to award $12 million to over 900 businesses through the Restaurant and Gyms Relief Program, and over 80% of those awards went to restaurants. And as we've recently shared with Council members and their staffs, on March 15th, the Pennsylvania COVID-19 Hospitality Industry Recovery Program, or CHIRP, launched in Philadelphia. This was created by the Commonwealth to alleviate revenue losses and pay eligible operating expenses for certain businesses in the hospitality industry that have been severely impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. CHIRP offers the Philadelphia hospitality businesses grants to eligible businesses in the program. And PIDC is very pleased to be working with the Commerce team to administer the Philadelphia program and award these grants, ranging between $5,000 and $50,000. These recent efforts, along with all of our other work, is in alignment with our commitment to creating every opportunity possible to make owning a restaurant in Philadelphia achievable and sustainable, and in a way that these businesses can continue to help our residents and visitors enjoy a key part of what makes our city so distinctive, attractive, and worthy of investment. I thank you all for the opportunity to testify today, and I'm very happy to take any questions or provide further information at your request. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the next witness on this panel?
The next witness on this panel is William Reed from Standard Tap and Other Restaurants. Mr. Reed, are you there? The witness
Typical,
after that.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
We can now. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I can't.
Name and proceed with your testimony.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm not able to join by video, but I appreciate everyone for asking me to come and testify in support of this bill. My name is William Reed. I'm writing this letter in support of the outdoor entertainment bill. To that end, let me talk a little bit about my businesses in Philadelphia. My partner, Paul Kimport, and I are 50-50 partners in 3 restaurants in Fishtown, Northern Liberties, and Northern Liberties. Standard Tap was our first business, which we opened in January of 2000. It's always been primarily a dine-in restaurant with a strong focus on local food and beer. Our second place, Johnny Brenda's Tavern, is also a music venue and located in Fishtown, and is often cited as a catalyst for some of the revitalization of Frankfurt Avenue that you see going on now. Our third venture is on Front and Cecil B. Moore, technically in Kensington, but most people think of it as Fishtown, and that's called the International. COVID-19 pandemic has obviously been devastating to the restaurant hospitality industry as a whole, and most intensely for dine-in restaurants. For our small restaurant group, we were flourishing pre-pandemic with promising growth, and our biggest concern was hiring reliable and talented employees to support our continued success. Across all three restaurants, we had roughly 125 full-time employees that we consistently paid above industry standards to keep and retain loyal employees. And we were rewarded with a very low turnover. It's extremely gratifying to see many employees purchase their first homes and put roots down in our community. As this letter is directed to City Council, I'll also point out that our business has contributed close to $250,000 each year to Philadelphia schools by way of the 10% drink tax. The impact of COVID-19 and the restrictions placed on indoor dining have driven many restaurants to collapse. We were luckier than some because we owned the buildings in which our businesses are located, and that allowed us to take on more debt to cover our losses in 2020. I just finished doing my taxes with my accountant, and 2020 was a massacre. In April, revenue was just 10% of previous years. Like many restaurants, we pivoted to takeout and delivery as best we could, but it wasn't our business model previously, and it only allowed us to get back to about 20% sales. The PPP and other disaster relief programs truly provided the only means for us to continue payroll for the employees we fought to retain, and I'm grateful for that. Philadelphia, like other cities, also provided a welcome opportunity to expand outdoor dining and also an easement of restrictions on to-go drinks. I can't say enough about how much this helped. When City Council announced the continuation of outdoor streeteries through 2021, it allowed us to invest more in the infrastructure of the outdoor dining area, creating a more attractive and vibrant environment. Everyone loves eating outside when it's 70 degrees out. Encouraging customers to visit when it's in the 50s requires some creative solutions. The grants and emergency aid were critical to keeping the hospitality industry solvent when health regulations effectively shut down much of our business. And I support that, actually, honestly, the regulations themselves. But truthfully, as an entrepreneur, I much prefer being given the freedom to help dig ourselves out of this financial hole. This bill in particular, allowing us to provide music or entertainment to guests outside, helps us create a welcoming environment to help bring customers back to dine at our restaurants. Outdoor dining is still acknowledged to be the safest way to eat at a restaurant. Everything we can do to make that an attractive option is a benefit to the public health as well as the economic health of the hospitality industry. This is why I wholeheartedly support this bill to legalize what many bars and restaurants have already been doing, which is to provide music, whether it be a background or live entertainment option, to make outdoor dining a more attractive option. In addition, I think it's imperative Philadelphia City Council take up the task of enforcement of city noise control standards. Currently, the PLCB and LCE enforce noise standards for music at licensed bars and restaurants in Philadelphia. Restaurants that don't have liquor licenses play by a completely different set of rules, where L&I is the enforcement agency for sound-related issues. City Council can and should apply for an exemption from the PLCB to allow local enforcement to take precedent over the PLCB's outdated and inefficient enforcement practices. In particular, PLCB regulations are completely subjective. They rely upon the liquor control agent's personal judgment of sound levels, literally their ears. Philadelphia's Air Management Services, a division of L&I, as you guys know, measure noise and sound scientifically with objective and fair standards. Two restaurants on the same block currently have completely different regulatory standards imposed upon them if one is a licensee and the other is not. Council opt out of the PLCB LCE regulation of sound issues within the city of Philadelphia. This is probably also necessary to allow the above referenced bill to be put into effect. Because current PLCB regulations prohibit any and all outside music at a licensed restaurant, with no exceptions. Thank you for this opportunity. Philly is a vibrant and growing city that I'm proud to be a part of. Our city government has risen to the challenge of this pandemic when there was a vacuum of leadership in this crisis. And I hope City Council continues to support local, independent, and vibrant businesses as it has in the past year. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the next witness for this panel?
Of course. The next witness for this bill is Nathan Dizelle from Woody's Bar and the Midtown Merchants Association.
Yes, good afternoon. First, I'd like to thank the committee for even considering such a wonderful bill. My name is J. Nathan Basil. I am the outdoor dining chair for the Midtown Merchants Association. Our association serves businesses in the area of 13th Street between Market and Locust Streets. Just to clarify, that would include 12th Street and Broad Street as well. Previously, I worked in our city's tremendous arts and cultural scene for both theater companies and museums. Prior to COVID-19, Philadelphia's cultural and restaurant scenes were experiencing record expansion and growth. Both sectors have now been devastated by the complexities and financial turmoil that this pandemic has caused. I am here in support of Bill 210135. When we began work with the city to bring outdoor dining to life, the one item that every restaurant in our corridor asked about was music and entertainment outside. Unfortunately, city policy and the state liquor code, as Mr. Reed mentioned, have made that impossible. Every restaurant that has wished to include live music or entertainment have found ways to safely include this while adhering to CDC guidelines, if it were permitted. Entertainment has been allowed at many times during the pandemic inside, again, while following state and CDC guidelines. If entertainment has been allowed inside, why not outside? Every health agency has stated repeatedly that outdoors is safer than indoors. The barrier for most is the state's liquor code, as just mentioned, which prohibits any amplified sound emitting from a licensee's property. To clarify, I'm referencing liquor licensees. While this overly broad policy may be understandable and doable in a suburban or rural environment, it is not designed for a city of the first class, such as Philadelphia. Under the restriction, no business with a liquor license may use amplified sound outside. It means that a violinist cannot plug into an amplifier to be heard over traffic. A dancer cannot play a pre-recorded soundtrack. A poet cannot use a microphone to make their words heard. However, the state does offer a way around this. To make this bill viable, the city must first begin by submitting paperwork to the State Liquor Control Board, stating that the city has its own sound enforcement laws and will take over sound enforcement within the city limits. Harrisburg, our state capital, has already done this, as have other municipalities. Not only would this initial step make it possible for the restaurant industry to work more closely with the cultural community, it would give the city more control over sound enforcement in the city. I understand that there have been some concerns about who will enforce sound from outdoor entertainment and how will we pay for it. Well, the first one's already been answered in our sound enforcement code here in Philadelphia. There's a few ways that can happen, either through the health department or through trained officers of the Philadelphia Police Department. I would like to recommend that the city also consider a modest adjustment to the amusement permit fee to cover the costs of such enforcement. Doing so would make the initiative budget neutral. Prior to COVID-19, Philadelphia was an exciting cultural and food city. That is now in crisis. We have the greatest opportunity in generations to expand our cultural and food prominence in our country. Bill 210135 is a first step for Philadelphia to rise from the pandemic like a phoenix. Think about the excitement that could be experienced when our culturally diverse restaurant scene comes together with the diversity of our cultural scene. This could be a beacon to residents of surrounding counties to come back and experience Philadelphia as we rise up. It could be an example to other cities of how to rise out of the shared nightmare we have all been experiencing. Please consider approving Bill 210135 and take the first steps to making it a reality by requesting that the city take over sound enforcement oversight from the liquor control enforcement agencies. I would be happy to answer any questions and to assist in any way to make this bill a reality. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair recognizes Councilmember Bass for a question. Councilmember Bass.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. I did have some questions and concerns about the bill, and I do want to state for the record very clearly that I reached out to the bill sponsor, Councilwoman Catherine Gilmore Richardson, who has been most gracious and attempting to reach out to me on several occasions to answer my questions. We did not connect just because of my very hectic schedule, but I do want to just note for the record that she really did make every effort to answer my questions and allay my concerns. My concerns are, and I know that the councilwoman is probably going to address these as follows in the future during the course of this hearing. But my concerns are really wrapped around what we have in my district and what we don't have. What we do have is restaurants, what I call stop and goes, what many people call stop and goes, which have a restaurant license. And these are establishments that are essentially illegally operating liquor stores and bars that have a restaurant license, which allow them to operate in the fashion in which they do operate. Several years ago, we passed a bill around stop and goes, and so I have a great concern that this could be somehow morphed into a tool that would empower stop and goes to be even more of a nuisance than they are already, if one would imagine that could even be possible. And most of our district, where these stop and goes are, people want them closed immediately. We wanted them to operate as restaurants because we need restaurants. And when I go back to my initial statement in terms of what we have and what we don't have, what we do have is stop and goes. What we do not have is our restaurants. We do not have restaurants operating throughout most of the 8th District. And so what I would like to just be on the record and state is that I am likely going to be supportive of allowing the bill to come out of committee today, but I do have significant concerns that may have some thoughts around exemption from the 8th District or, try to work through my questions and concerns with the bill sponsors through additional amendments if it's necessary. So I just wanted to be on the record with that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you putting that information on the record. Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I also want to thank Councilmember Bass. With our very busy, hectic, competing schedules, we were not able to touch base, but I appreciate the question because I do think it's important knowing the issues that we have dealt with, particularly in local neighborhood communities and commercial corridors, to ensure we have clarity around the stop and go businesses that sort of operate as if they are restaurants, but really, they're stop and goes. And I want to give you again kudos on that bill because I think that was one of the most important bills that passed during the last session of council. So for the record, I wanted to, ask Mr. Carroll about where the streeteries are located and if he could detail for Councilmember Bass sort of the process that we were able to work out through the amendment process and then also the permit process that's in the bill. And can you speak to specifically the issue around, the potential of stop and goes, knowing that most of them, based on the information I have, are not or have not signed up to be streeteries or provide outdoor dining.
Yeah, that's the case. There's really a number of them that are doing some form of takeout, but that is not what's contemplated in this bill. You need to have a license or obtain a license to do either a sidewalk cafe or a streetery. So that's sort of a setup which is in the parking lane. In many of the situations where we've got nuisance businesses. They're not. I think they understand that there's a little bit more scrutiny that comes with having that license, and they're not signed up to do that. Also, within the bill, as you refer, council member, there's opportunities for us to, at first, right out of the gate, apply that scrutiny at the discretion of the streets commissioner. So he has the right in writing to explain why a proposal is being denied, and having a documented history being categorized as a nuisance business would certainly be a legitimate basis to do that. Furthermore, as we indicated, we need that advance notice, and folks who are not able to kind of comply with the basic setup requirements, also the other regulatory requirements, if they've got a violation, it's basically sort of you get that one strike, but beyond that, you're not eligible anymore. You're not eligible to take part. So I feel pretty comfortable we can stay ahead of this. Like we've discussed, I think it's important for the commissioner to have the ability to kind of hold a tight fist around these opportunities for a period of time to make sure that there's clarity on all parts, that the businesses, the public, the performers, and within government, before we get that pace that we expect to maybe pick up throughout the summer. And on that basis, I think we're in a good position to start this off on the right foot and not have these types of problems and not contribute to existing problems, as Councilmember Bass also pointed out.
Mr. Carroll, for the record, I just wanted to address Councilmember Bass's concern specifically around the stop and goes. The stop and goes, or do we know of any stop and goes that have applied for outdoor dining or to be a streetery? Because, for this legislation, they would have to be a streetery already or applied to be one to be allowed to have the outdoor entertainment, and they would still have to go through an additional process with the city. I just want to make that clear for the record. Based on Councilmember Bass's concerns.
So I will need to go back and work with license and inspection and streeter, but we can develop the list of folks who've applied and do that overlay to make that comparison, I think, in a pretty straightforward manner. So we'll bring that information back as soon as we can.
Is that it, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Yes, on that particular issue, but I think Councilmember Bass wanted to be recognized.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Bass.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. I appreciate the clarity. I think that goes a long way in helping me to making some decisions regarding the support of the bill. I think, understanding that is just designated for streeteries, is an important designation. But I guess one of the questions I also have is for Mr. Carroll. One of the problems we have in the city of Philadelphia is around enforcement. And so when things go wrong, it almost feels as though we are stuck with it, whatever it is. Getting support from the administration or from the various departments to deal with an issue effectively becomes quite challenge. So with a streetery gone bad, that's providing entertainment.
Yeah, so I certainly want to recognize that there have been some challenges in the area of enforcement. We want to do everything we can to continue to work with council on that issue, and if you guys can help us to pinpoint, working with neighbors and other stakeholders where these locations are, we will do what we can to focus our efforts in those places. With respect to this type of work, like we've mentioned, we think we have some good protections in place, but we have the opportunity to beef some of that stuff up over time. And the work involved in kind of preparing to do the performances, we want to make sure we have enough advance notice. And I think that's a key point. I mean, people can't just go out there and set up on the drop of a dime. So that allows us to sort of flag locations that come back and where we may have had issues in the past and to kind of reach out to them. There may be some people who are trying to do things the right way, but it could be the circumstance of the neighborhood or, folks who are kind of in the vicinity who create issues. we want to be very clear. This should not turn into festivals. This should not contribute to crowding. And so that is going to be something we have to keep our eye on, especially as the summer rolls on and we may see interactions with things like the return of block parties, special events. So we do want to flag that. And where we see those convergence sort of events coming together, that will be a basis for us to try and roll back the opportunity in some instances, especially if we have some history of nuisance activity associated with specific locations. So, the one thing I think we need to be paying attention to is not everybody's going to even bother to follow rules. And so we do need to do a good job of kind of keeping our eyes wide across the city. And on that front, the more we can partner with council and, your networks to understand what's going on, I think the better off this is going to work out for everybody.
Thank you. No further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you both. Thank you, Councilmember Bass. Thank you, Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Are there any other questions by members of council for this particular panel?
Chair, I just wanted to again thank Councilmember Bass for those important questions, because I do think it's vital to have those answers specifically for the council districts that may have streeteries in their communities. I just wanted to follow up for the record with Mr. Carroll to say that we'll await that information relative to the amount of streeteries per council district so that we could share that information with all of the district council members. And also for the record, Mr. Carroll, I just wanted you to detail for the record the sort of application and permit process so that that's on the record from the perspective of your department as well. Knowing that not everybody's going to follow the rules, but I think with this process, it gives us a better opportunity around enforcement for those who are trying to skirt the rules.
Right. So that process involves sending an email 72 hours in advance of a performance, which indicates the location of the performance and the nature of the performance to there's an email address we've set up for all of this work we've been doing. It's streetery@phila.gov. And for the period up through June 15th of this year, we're also going to require that there be an application for a footway closure permit that's submitted to the Streets Department and will be approved at the discretion of the Streets Commissioner. And I want to clarify, the Commissioner has the ability to waive the fees associated with that permit. And we intend to do that, but the fact that a permit is required gives us that extra level of scrutiny that we've been talking about in order to make sure that this kicks off in a safe manner. If there's other details with respect to that permitting process, which is fully online, folks can refer to the Streets Department website, philadelphiastreets.com, and we'll be happy to talk through any issues people have. If they just send an email to that address, they can, we can maintain that communication with them on that basis as well.
Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the next panel?
My apologies, Mr. Chair. If I could just add one quick item of relevance to the council member's question. There is
Sure,
another.
Hold on 1 second. Chair recognizes Mr. Basil.
There's one other item that is probably beneficial to Councilmember Bass's point, and that is that currently entertainment, you can't, if you have a cafe license or a liquor license, you can't just have entertainment. It does require a city amusement license on top of that. So having both the streetery or street cafe license and the amusement license should be considered for this outdoor entertainment bill.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Basil. We appreciate the clarity. Mr. Clerk, can you please call the next panel?
Of course. The next bill we'll hear is Bill 210180, and the witness for that bill is Sarah Adamo from Licensing and Inspections.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Please state your name for the record, and you may begin with your testimony.
Pardon me, Mr. Chair.
Chair recognizes Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Yes, pardon me. I just wanted to, for the record, notate the other witnesses that submitted letters in support of the legislation for the record.
For the record, yep. So, council member, for the record, you're referring to the previous legislation that we were just discussing as it relates to our outdoor eatery. Do you want to provide those names and then we'll move on to the next panel?
Sure. Thank you very much for your latitude, Mr. Chair, regarding Bill number 210135. There were also additional letters of support submitted to you, Mr. Chair, and to the members of this committee from Melissa Bova, Vice President of Government Affairs at PLRA, Jeff Gorosino, CEO of Visit Philly, Priscilla Luce, Interim President and CEO at the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, Nicole Marquis, Save Philly Restaurants, and Michelle Freeman, CEO of Witty Gritty. They all submitted written testimony in support of this legislation. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And we appreciate those people providing testimony. It's important. So thank you. And thank you for your leadership on this issue. And thank you to all the parties involved for providing such clarity. It's all very much appreciated. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the next bill and introduce the next panel?
Of course, Mr. Chair. The next bill is Bill 210180. The witness to testify is Sarah Adamo from Licensing and Inspections. Ms. Adamo, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Committee of Streets and Services. My name is Sarah Adamo, and I am the Legislative Affairs Manager for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. Today, I am here to provide testimony on Bill number 210180, which, if enacted, will amend Section 9-213 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Farmers Markets. The bill would permit a farmer's market to be located on the sidewalk and adjoining curb lane in the rear of 6301 Haverford Avenue. The department has no objection to this bill and is prepared to enforce its provisions shall it become law. Thank you for the opportunity to provide the department's testimony on bill number 210180. I'm happy to answer questions at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of this committee for this particular witness on this bill? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the title of the next bill as well as the next panel?
Yes. The next bill to be heard is Bill 210136. Laura Copeland from the Philadelphia Water Department is the witness to testify.
Good afternoon, Chairman Thomas and members of the Committee on Streets and Services. My name is Laura Copeland, and I'm the Assistant Deputy Commissioner for Education, Community Engagement, and Government Affairs for the Philadelphia Water Department. I'm here today to testify in support of Bill number 210136, sponsored by Councilmember Jones, authorizing the Procurement Commissioner to enter into a contract for the construction of a sewer and appurtenant work required to provide public sewer service in the unit block of Osborne Street. The impacted properties on this block of Osborne Street are currently served by private septic tanks, which are no longer functioning properly, and requires the installation of a public sewer as soon as possible. There is no access to the rear yards of the septic tank for repair, maintenance, or replacement, and the property size does not allow for proper septic tank installation. This situation has resulted in unsanitary conditions for many years. In accordance with the Philadelphia Code, impacted residents on the unit block of Osborne Street will be assessed for the installation of the new sewer. These charges will be billed to the individual property owners' existing water, sewer, and stormwater accounts. PWD respectfully requests that this bill be reported favorably out of this committee and that the rules of council be suspended to allow for the first reading of this bill at the next session of City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to appear today before you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Are there any questions from members of this committee for this particular witness? Hearing none, I want to say thank you for your testimony and let you know it's very much appreciated. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please, thank you. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the name of the next bill as well as the next panel?
Of course. The next two bills to be heard are Bill 210178 and 210179. Noel Marconi from Streets is the witness testifying on both bills.
Good afternoon, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noel Marconi, and I am the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here to offer testimony on Bill number 210178, introduced by Councilmember Parker. This is an ordinance that establishes a no truck parking regulations on both sides of Frontenac Street from Levick Street to Devereaux Avenue. Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Good afternoon, Chairperson Thomas and members of the Streets and Services Committee. My name is Noel Marconi, and I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs for the Department of Streets. I'm here today to offer testimony on Bill number 210179, introduced by Councilmember Parker. This is an ordinance to establish a no truck parking regulation on Hammond Avenue between East Nedrow Avenue and Crescentville Road. Department of Streets has no objections to this bill. The regulations can be posted within 30 days of the bill's passage. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Is very much appreciated. Are there any questions from members of the committee on these two bills, specifically for this witness? Hearing none, I want to say thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. Mr. Clerk, can you please read the name of the next bill and call the next panel?
Of course. The next bills to be heard are Bill 210001, 210118, and 210119. And the witness on all three bills is Dion Bracely from the Philadelphia Parking Authority. Ms. Bracely?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Dion Bracely, Deputy Manager for the Philadelphia Parking Authority. Thank you for allowing me to testify before Council regarding ordinances 2100.
Ms. Bracely, could you pause for just a moment?
Yes.
Can the court reporter hear Ms. Bracely?
Yes, I can hear. She's a little faint, but I can hear.
Okay. Thanks, Tania.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yes, can you just start from the beginning, state your name, and go ahead and proceed with your testimony?
Yes, I'll start over. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Dion Bracely, Deputy Manager for the Philadelphia Parking Authority. Thank you for allowing me to testify before Council regarding ordinances 210001, 210118, and 210119, establishing parking regulations. The Philadelphia Parking Authority has no objection to the ordinances previously read before Council and recommends favorable consideration. Thank you again for your time. I will be happy to respond to questions at this time. I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the witnesses to these bills.
Thank you. Was that your testimony for all three bills?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Are there any questions from this panel or this witness on these three bills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just make sure that I know you had mentioned earlier, just recognized as present for the hearing, Mark Squilla.
Thank you, Council Member. Please note for the record that Council Member Squilla is present. He has been present for some time now. Thank you, Council Member Squilla. With there being none, I want to say thank you to the last panel for your testimony. We appreciate it. Are there any other questions or comments from members of this committee for any of the bills that were introduced thus far? There being none, I want to just say, there being no further questions from the members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify, I will ask if there is anyone else present in this hearing whose name we have failed to call and that wishes to offer testimony on any of the bills being considered today? Hearing none, I want to thank all the panels and witnesses for their participation today. We value your opinions. I now invite all panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our public meeting. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants will be leaving the hearing. And again, this concludes the public hearing of the committee, and we will now go into the public meeting to consider the actions to be taken on the bills before this committee today. Mr. Maynard, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are present will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Mr. Clerk.
Vice Chair Squilla.
Present.
Councilmember Bass.
Good afternoon. I'm still present.
Very good, Councilmember. Thank you for checking in. Councilmember O. Councilmember O.
Repeat that?
Councilmember O, are you present?
I am present. Thank you. I didn't hear you. Thank you.
No problems at all, sir. Councilmember Brooks.
I am present.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Johnson.
Present.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Present.
Thank you, Councilmember. And Chair Thomas.
Present. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. A quorum of committee members are present. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a single motion to approve the amendments to the bills that are being considered today. You're on mute, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I open amendment to bill number 210135. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that these amendments be approved.
Second.
Second.
It's been approved and properly second that the amendments to the bill just read by Councilmember Squilla be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. The motion carries, and these amendments have been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a single motion on the bills that are being considered today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move bill number 210001, 210002, 210118, 210119, 210135 as amended, 210136, 210178, 210179, and 210180, including be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended and submit the first reading of these bills at the next session of council.
Second.
It's been moved. Thank you, council members. It's been moved and properly second that the bills just read by Councilmember Squilla, including any amendments that have been approved today, be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of these bills at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. This concludes the business before the Committee of Streets and Services today. I want to thank everybody on this committee for your participation, your flexibility in making this happen. I appreciate you all, and I'm pretty sure the citizens of Philadelphia do as well. Thank you, folks. Have a good one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.